Gloria had always been the backbone of her family, holding it all together even when the weight of the world seemed too heavy to bear. It was a Tuesday, a typical evening in her home, but something felt different. Something she couldn't quite place was pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She stood by the kitchen window, watching the sun set behind the old oak tree in the yard. The air outside was thick with summer's lingering heat, but it didn't bother her much. She had more pressing things to think about. Her phone buzzed from the counter, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from her son, Tyler, dinner at 7. Don't be late, simple, direct, and with no emotion. No, I hope to see you there. No, love you, Mom, just an order. Gloria let out a slow breath, staring at the message for a moment longer than she probably should have. It wasn't the first time Tyler had been distant. It wasn't the first time he had treated her like an afterthought, but tonight felt different. There was something in his words that stung deeper than usual. She put the phone down and walked over to the table where she had a small gift prepared for her granddaughter, Naomi. She had been saving for months, putting away a portion of her modest income every month. It wasn't much, but she'd managed to put together a savings bond for Naomi's college fund. Along with it, she'd bought a leather-bound journal from the local bookstore, one she thought Naomi would cherish forever. Gloria wrapped the gift carefully, tying it with a purple ribbon, Naomi's favorite color. She set the gift bag aside and took a deep breath. She had always been the giver, the one who sacrificed and worked hard to make sure her family had everything they needed. But this time, she wasn't sure if it would matter. She wasn't sure if her son or anyone would truly see her. Her fingers traced the edges of the wrapping paper as she thought about the years she'd spent raising Tyler. The countless nights she worked 2 jobs after her husband Earl passed away, the way she had always been there for him no matter what. But tonight, she wasn't sure if it was enough. Tonight, she felt like she was fading away, like the love she'd poured into her family was no longer enough to keep her visible. She grabbed her purse and glanced at the clock. 6:30 p.m. She had just enough time to get to the restaurant. She wasn't sure why she still tried so hard, but she did. Maybe it was because, deep down, she still believed that one day they'd see her, truly see her for who she was, not just the one who gave, but the one who deserved to be seen in return. As she left the house, the cool air outside did nothing to ease the knot in her stomach. It was as if the universe was aligning itself against her, pulling her deeper into a feeling of insignificance. She couldn't shake it, and the more she tried, the heavier it became. Tyler's text echoed in her mind, "Don't be late." But she couldn't help but wonder, when did she stop being invited? When did she become just another obligation? And more importantly, why was she still trying so hard to fit into a world that no longer seemed to need her? Gloria's car hummed quietly as she drove through the city streets, heading toward the restaurant. It was a place she had never been fond of, too flashy, too upscale, but Tyler insisted. "Mom, it's a nice place. You'll love it," he'd said when he'd invited her to Naomi's birthday dinner, but Gloria knew better. She had never felt truly comfortable in places like that. They always had this air of exclusivity, as if you had to prove you belonged just to be let in. She could almost feel the judgment from the staff, the way they looked at her like she was out of place. She parked in the lot and stepped out, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders as she made her way to the restaurant entrance. The hostess greeted her with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the same look she had seen 100 times, disbelief at her presence, like she wasn't supposed to be there. Gloria straightened her back, lifting her chin, and walked past her without saying a word. The hostess led her through the room, where laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. She glanced around at the other patrons, well-dressed, engaged in their conversations, blissfully unaware of the woman walking through their midst who felt like a stranger in her own skin. When she reached the table, her son Tyler was seated at the head, wearing a suit that screamed success. His wife, Brittany, sat beside him, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Gloria's entire wardrobe. Naomi, their 9-year-old daughter, sat across from them, absorbed in the screen of her tablet. Gloria stood there for a moment, unsure whether to greet them or just sit down. She hadn't even been noticed yet. It was as if the world around her was a bubble that she couldn't quite pierce. "Hey, Mom, you made it," Tyler said, not looking up from the wine list. He barely glanced at her, and his voice lacked the warmth it used to have. "Hi, sweetheart," Gloria said softly, taking her seat at the far end of the table as if she were a distant relative, not the woman who had raised him. Brittany offered a quick smile but didn't engage, too busy with her phone. Naomi barely acknowledged her, too lost in her game to notice the presence of her grandmother. The silence that followed was deafening. Gloria had been here countless times before, but tonight felt different. She couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong, that she was just a shadow in the background of their lives. She set the gift in front of Naomi, but her granddaughter didn't even glance up. Gloria's heart sank as Naomi pushed it aside with barely a glance, returning her attention to her game. "Thanks, Grandma," Naomi muttered, but it was hollow, like a script she had read 1,000 times. "You're welcome, baby girl," Gloria said, her voice thick with emotion she didn't want to reveal. Tyler, sensing the tension, finally looked up. "You know, you didn't have to bring anything, Mom. We've got everything covered," he said, his words carrying the weight of a man trying to maintain control of a situation that was slipping out of his hands. Gloria just nodded, feeling the sting of his words. She had always tried to give them everything: money, love, time, but it felt like they never truly appreciated it. Maybe they had never seen it. Maybe they had only ever seen the woman who gave, not the woman who needed. Gloria's heart pounded in her chest as she walked out of the restaurant. The door closed behind her with a soft thud, but it felt like it was closing on everything she had worked for, everything she had given. She stepped out into the cool night air, her breath coming out in shallow bursts. The world around her felt distant, as though she was no longer part of it. Everything she'd done for her family, everything she had sacrificed, it seemed like none of it mattered. She looked up at the sky, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The stars above were so clear, and yet they felt so far away, much like how she felt at the dinner table. Tyler, Brittany, and Naomi, they were all so far away. Not in miles, but in something deeper. A distance that couldn't be measured in miles. She walked slowly down the street, her mind replaying the moments of the evening over and over again. The silence, the disinterest. The way they had all acted like she was invisible. Not a word of concern, not a word of kindness. Just nothing. It wasn't the first time. No, she had learned to endure this distance over the years. The subtle dismissals, the way her presence was barely acknowledged unless it suited them. It was always like this, always, but tonight felt like the breaking point. It felt like the last straw. She had given everything to them. For years, she had worked tirelessly to provide, to make sure Tyler had everything he needed. She'd sacrificed her own comfort, her own dreams, just to make sure her family had a roof over their heads, food on the table, and the things they wanted. But now, it felt like she had been giving for nothing. And that gift for Naomi, the journal and savings bond, what had it even mattered? Naomi hadn't even looked up from her tablet. She hadn't even cared. And Tyler? He hadn't even acknowledged it beyond a quick glance, as though it were just another thing she was doing for him. Gloria paused on the sidewalk, letting the cool breeze hit her face. She took a deep breath. The weight of it all was suffocating, but there was something inside her, something she hadn't felt in years, that began to stir, something small but strong. She wasn't just their ATM. She wasn't just the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left. She had a life, she had worth. She wasn't going to keep pretending she was fine with being invisible. She had sacrificed too much. Her thoughts turned to Earl, her late husband. He had always told her to stand tall no matter what, even when the world wanted to knock her down, even when she felt like she had nothing left. He had believed in her. And she had to believe in herself again. She could feel the anger building inside her, not the kind of anger that made you lash out, but the kind of anger that gave you strength. The kind of anger that helped you stand up for yourself when you had been knocked down too many times. She pulled out her phone and texted Tyler. "I'll be home soon, we need to talk." It wasn't a message she wanted to send, but it was one she knew had to be said. She had spent too many years allowing him to take advantage of her, too many years putting his needs before her own. She wasn't going to let him control her anymore. As she drove home, her thoughts swirled with the possibilities. What would she say to him? How would she make him understand? But in her heart, she knew it wasn't about him understanding. It was about her taking control back. It was about her finally standing tall, just like Earl had always wanted her to. The house was quiet when Gloria walked in. The familiar scent of lavender from the candles she kept lit throughout the house filled the air, but it didn't bring her the comfort it usually did. Her footsteps were soft against the hardwood floor, each one echoing louder than the last in her mind. Tyler's car was parked outside, his belongings scattered on the kitchen counter. Nothing about the house had changed, yet everything felt different. She could almost hear the familiar hum of Earl's voice in her head, urging her to stand tall. "You've got this, Pearl, don't let them walk over you." She had ignored his words for too long. Maybe it was because, in the back of her mind, she thought it would be different if she just gave a little more, tried a little harder. But now, standing in the middle of her home, she realized how much she had lost, not just her money but her self-respect, her ability to stand her ground. She went straight to her bedroom, sitting at the edge of the bed. The weight of everything, her years of sacrifice, her silent endurance, and the breaking point she had just reached, came crashing down. But instead of feeling defeated, something shifted. There was clarity now. She had spent too many years thinking she had to do it all for them, but in doing so, she had forgotten herself. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her phone and opened her messages. Tyler's last text was still there, blunt and commanding. "Dinner at 7, don't be late." She looked at it for a moment, feeling the sting again, but now it wasn't anger she felt, it was something stronger, determination. She tapped out a reply, her fingers steady as she wrote, "I'll be home soon." "We need to talk." For years, she had been afraid to have this conversation, afraid of what it might do to their relationship, afraid of the consequences. But what had she gotten in return for all her fear and hesitation? A son who saw her as a convenience, not as the woman who had given him life. It was time to take the next step, time to stop hiding behind pleasantries and sacrifices that meant nothing. She glanced around the room, her eyes settling on the framed photograph of Earl on the nightstand. She smiled softly, the ache in her chest lessening just a little. "I'm doing this for us, baby," she whispered to the photo. "I'm doing it for both of us." She stood up and walked to her filing cabinet, pulling out the folder where she had kept all the records, the bank statements, the receipts, the transfers. Everything she had done for Tyler over the years, everything she had given. She didn't know what she expected to find, but she couldn't ignore the weight of the truth any longer. As she opened the folder and began to sift through the papers, she couldn't help but think about all the moments she had spent in fear, fear of rejection, fear of losing Tyler's love. But as she looked at the records, she realized that her love had never been the problem. It was the way she had given it. Too much, too often, without expecting anything in return. Her hand shook slightly as she counted out the money she had transferred over the years, the amount staggering. She had given nearly $500,000 to Tyler, her retirement savings, her security. All of it had been funneled into his life, into his debts, into his dreams that had never been his own. She felt the anger rise again, but this time it was different. It wasn't anger at herself. It wasn't guilt or regret. It was empowerment. She wasn't a charity case. She was a woman who had worked hard her entire life, and she deserved more than this. She picked up her phone and called the bank. "Hi, I need to cancel a transfer. It was scheduled to post this morning. Please reverse it immediately." The bank rep on the other end hesitated, and Gloria could hear the slight shock in their voice. "Are you sure, Mrs. Williams? That's a large sum and it's already pending." "I'm sure," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm done enabling him." The rep agreed, and within minutes the transfer was canceled. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders, but she knew this was only the beginning. There was more she needed to do, more steps to take. As she hung up the phone, Gloria felt a sense of finality. The weight of her past choices was still there, but now she was walking forward, not backward. She wasn't going to be anyone's ATM anymore. And she wasn't going to let fear hold her back from finally standing tall. The next morning, Gloria woke early, the rising sun casting soft light through the window, bathing the room in a warm glow. But today, the light didn't feel comforting. It felt like a signal, a new beginning, a new day where things would be different. The day she would no longer sit quietly by, letting her family walk all over her. She sat up slowly, staring at the clock on the wall. 6:30 a.m. The house was still quiet, save for the soft ticking of the old clock her husband Earl had left behind. She had always loved that clock. The steady rhythm of time passing, reminding her of the years she had spent building a life, raising Tyler, and sacrificing for those she loved. But now, she couldn't help but wonder how much time she had wasted. How much of herself she had given away, only to be left with empty hands. how much longer she was going to let her son walk all over her, make her feel small. She pushed the covers off and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Today, she wasn't going to feel sorry for herself. She wasn't going to allow herself to fall into the role of the invisible mother, the charity case. She was going to take control. Gloria walked over to the small desk in the corner of her room where she kept her filing cabinet. She had kept all her financial records, everything she had done for Tyler, and she wasn't going to let it go on any longer. She opened the drawer and began pulling out the papers. She could feel the weight of each transaction, each loan, each sacrifice that had been made. It was time to take charge. She pulled out the stack of bank statements and laid them across the desk. The total amount she had given to Tyler over the years made her stomach turn. Over $500,000 money she had saved from working multiple jobs, money that had come from her own hard work, her own blood, sweat, and tears. And all of it had gone to support Tyler's lifestyle, his debts, and his lies. She wasn't angry anymore. This wasn't about anger. This was about clarity, about taking back control of her life. Her fingers traced the documents, counting the totals, adding the amounts in her head. She had been more than generous, but this time it was different. She wasn't going to give any more, not a single cent. She grabbed her phone, dialing the number for her bank again. This time her voice was firm, unwavering. She wasn't going to back down. I need to cancel every automatic transfer I have for Tyler, all of it. And I want to remove my name from any joint accounts. Immediately, she said, her voice steady but strong. The bank representative on the other end seemed a little taken aback. Mrs. Williams, are you sure? That's a big decision, I'm sure, she replied. It's time for him to stand on his own 2 feet. He's 42 years old. He's had enough of my help. I've given him everything and I'm done. I'm not his ATM anymore. There was a pause, but the rep finally agreed. Understood, Mrs. Williams. We'll process that for you right away. Gloria hung up, a sense of empowerment flooding over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control of her own life. The financial strings that had tied her to Tyler were now severed. The weight she had carried for years, the weight of guilt, of obligation, of love that had been taken for granted, was finally lifting. But as she stood there, staring at the empty desk, a new question popped into her mind. What now? What did she do with all this newfound freedom? She walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street, and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she didn't feel burdened by her choices. She wasn't worried about how she would be perceived by Tyler, Brittany, or anyone else. She was finally living for herself. She smiled softly to herself. Earl had always told her to stand tall no matter what, and now she was doing just that. The next few days felt different for Gloria. The weight she had carried for so long, the heavy burden of giving and giving without ever receiving, seemed lighter. The phone calls with the bank had freed her in a way she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer tied to Tyler financially, and that realization, while daunting, felt like a small victory. She had taken the first step, but now it was time for the real conversation, the one she had been avoiding for so long. Tyler had been calling her. At first, it was just a couple of missed texts, a voicemail asking if everything was all right. But as the days passed, the calls became more frequent, more urgent. Gloria could hear the frustration in his voice when she didn't pick up, and part of her felt the familiar pull to just give in, to answer the phone, to explain herself, to make everything okay again. But not this time. This time she was in control. She sat at her kitchen table one morning, staring at her phone. It buzzed again, another text from Tyler. Mom, we really need to talk, please. Where are you? You've been avoiding me. Gloria paused, her fingers resting lightly on the screen. She had always avoided confrontation, always tried to smooth things over, make everything look perfect on the surface, but not anymore. She wasn't going to let him guilt-trip her into fixing things for him. She took a deep breath and typed back. We do need to talk, but not right now. When you're ready to listen, come over. I'll be here. Her hands shook slightly as she hit send. She wasn't sure what to expect from him. Tyler had never been one for serious conversations, especially when it came to their finances. But this time, she wasn't afraid. This time, she had something to say, and she was ready to be heard. The doorbell rang 2 hours later, and when Gloria opened the door, there he was. Tyler stood there, his face tense, his hands in his pockets. He looked different somehow. The confident, successful man he used to portray was gone, replaced by someone who seemed lost. Mom, he began, his voice low, we need to talk, I don't understand what's going on. You've been shutting me out and I don't know why. Gloria stepped aside, letting him in. Come sit down, Tyler, we do need to talk. They sat at the kitchen table and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, but Gloria wasn't about to break it. She had been silent for too long. I've been doing some thinking, she said finally, her voice steady but firm, and I realized something. I've been giving. Giving and giving for years, and I haven't gotten anything in return, not even respect, not even the decency of being seen as someone who matters. Tyler's brow furrowed. What do you mean? I've always appreciated everything you've done for me, you've always been there. No, Tyler, you've never seen me, you've seen someone who's there to do for you, to bail you out, to take care of things when they go wrong. But you never saw me as a person, you never saw me as someone who needed something too, and I've had enough, I can't keep doing this anymore. Tyler looked stunned, his mouth opening and closing as though he didn't know what to say. But I don't understand, you've always been there, you've always helped me. I have, Gloria said softly, but that's the problem, I've always helped you, and I never asked for anything in return because I thought it was just what a mother does. But now, I realize that I've been enabling you, I've been letting you believe that you don't have to take responsibility for your own life, and I've been doing it at the cost of my own peace. The words hit him like a wave. Gloria could see it in his eyes, the way he finally understood what she was saying, but still he couldn't fully grasp the depth of it. He was confused, maybe even hurt, but Gloria wasn't backing down now. This conversation needed to happen for both of them. Tyler, she continued, her voice softer now but resolute, I love you, I always have, but I can't keep giving, not like this. You have to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. You're 42 years old, you've been living off of my savings, off of my sacrifices, and I can't keep doing it. You have to take responsibility for your own life. Tyler's face softened, the anger melting away as he looked at her. I didn't know that's how you felt, he said quietly. I thought you were always there for me. Gloria nodded, her heart aching for him. I was, but I wasn't doing you any favors, Tyler. I was robbing you of the chance to grow, to really stand up and take care of your own life. And it's time for that to change. There was a long silence as Tyler processed her words. Gloria could see the wheels turning in his mind, the realization sinking in. She knew this wasn't easy for him, but it was the only way. She had to let him go, let him face the consequences of his own choices. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about being honest. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. I didn't see it before, I guess. I guess I was scared, I didn't know how to do it on my own. Gloria reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. I know, and I know you'll figure it out, you've got more strength in you than you realize. I just can't carry you anymore. Tyler sat there in silence, looking at their hands, but for the first time, Gloria felt a sense of peace. She had done what she needed to do. She had spoken her truth, and now Tyler had a chance to find his own. The days following the conversation with Tyler felt like a quiet storm inside Gloria. She had finally done it, finally put her foot down, laid out the truth, and stopped enabling her son's behavior. But that didn't mean the weight of it all didn't sit heavily on her heart. She wanted Tyler to understand, to get it, but the reality of letting him go, of no longer being the safety net, was harder than she had imagined. Tyler didn't call immediately after their conversation. The silence between them was deafening, and for the first time in years, Gloria wasn't sure how to fill it. She knew that Tyler had to process it in his own way, but that didn't stop her from wondering if she had done the right thing. Maybe she had been too harsh, maybe she should have given him more time to figure it out. But every time those thoughts crept in, she reminded herself why she had done it. She had given him everything. She had spent years being there for him, sacrificing her own well-being just to make sure he was okay. But now she needed to be okay. She needed to stand tall, just like Earl had always told her to. She spent her days in quiet reflection, taking walks in the neighborhood, visiting the small coffee shop she had loved for years but had rarely gone to, too busy with her family. But now she was rediscovering herself bit by bit. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was real. She wasn't the same woman she had been before. She was stronger, clearer. Then, one afternoon, the phone rang. The name on the screen made Gloria's heart skip a beat. Tyler. She took a deep breath before answering, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked up the phone. "Hello, Mom, it's me." Tyler's voice came through, quiet and unsure. "Can we talk?" Gloria felt the weight of his words, and for a moment her heart softened. She had been waiting for this, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to expect. "Of course, Tyler, come over whenever you're ready." He didn't waste time. Within the hour, he was standing at her door, his face drawn with emotion. This was different. This wasn't the confident man who had once walked in and out of her life, taking what he needed and offering nothing in return. This was a son, vulnerable, unsure, and Gloria realized, finally ready to face what had been holding him back all these years. She stepped aside, letting him in, and they sat in the living room. Neither of them spoke right away. Tyler's eyes kept darting around the room as if he were searching for something in the familiar surroundings, trying to find the words to bridge the gap between them. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Tyler finally said, his voice low. "And I get it now. I see what you meant. I've been selfish. I've been using you for so long that I didn't even realize how much I was taking. How much I was hurting you." Gloria didn't speak. She just let him talk, letting the silence settle between them. She didn't need to say anything. The fact that he was here, willing to admit his mistakes, was enough for now. "I've been lying to myself for years, pretending I had everything figured out. But I didn't. I've been relying on you to fix my problems, to bail me out when things got tough, but that's not fair to you. And it's not fair to me." Gloria nodded, her heart heavy but hopeful. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Tyler was finally taking responsibility. He wasn't blaming anyone anymore. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was owning up to his actions, and that was something she could respect. "I know I've asked for a lot, Mom," he continued, his voice cracking a little. "I don't know how to fix it all, but I'm going to try. I'm going to start taking care of myself. I'm going to get my act together." Gloria's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. This was the breakthrough she had hoped for, but she wasn't going to let her emotions take over. "Not yet. I've always known you could do it, Tyler," she said softly. "I've always known you had the strength to make it on your own, but you had to realize it for yourself. And I'm proud of you for finally seeing it." Tyler wiped his eyes, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to work for it. I'm going to show you that I can do this without asking you for anything else." Gloria's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't going to be easy, she knew that, but this was the first step. Tyler was finally seeing the truth, and for the first time in years, she believed he would make it. They sat in silence for a while, just absorbing the gravity of the moment. Tyler wasn't asking for her forgiveness, and Gloria wasn't giving it just yet, but she was willing to give him a chance to prove that he could stand on his own. A chance to rebuild the trust that had been broken over the years. As the afternoon light began to fade, Gloria knew that things were shifting, not just between her and Tyler, but within herself. The past was still there, but it no longer defined her. She wasn't the woman who had given everything away. She was the woman who had learned to take care of herself, and that made all the difference. The days after their conversation passed in a blur of emotions. Tyler had left her house that day, promising to start over, to make things right, but Gloria knew this was just the beginning. She had heard the words, felt the weight of his apology, but trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. It would take time, and she was willing to give him that time. But what about herself? Could she heal from the years of sacrifices, the years of being overlooked and undervalued? Gloria couldn't ignore the feeling that she had finally done what she needed to do, not just for Tyler, but for herself. The weight that had once felt suffocating was beginning to lift, piece by piece. Still, there was a part of her that questioned whether it was all too late, whether the damage had already been done. As the days went on, Gloria began to notice small changes in her daily routine. She didn't wake up with a pit in her stomach anymore, dreading another day of feeling like she wasn't enough. She took long walks through the neighborhood, something she hadn't done in years. She spent time at the local library, reading books for herself, not for anyone else. She started cooking meals she actually enjoyed, rather than making do with whatever would please everyone else. There was a peace in those small moments, a peace she hadn't realized she was missing. One morning, Gloria sat in her favorite chair by the window with a cup of coffee in her hand. The sunlight streamed in, casting warm light across her face. She had a moment of clarity. It was as though everything had come together in that moment. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't looking over her shoulder to see if anyone needed her. She wasn't wondering if Tyler was doing okay or if Brittany needed help with something. She was just present, and it felt good. As the week passed, Tyler reached out more often. He called to check in, asked how she was doing. There was a change in his voice, a softness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't rushing her to forgive him, he wasn't asking for more, he was simply trying to rebuild what had been broken. One day, he came over with a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. It wasn't much, but the gesture meant the world to Gloria. She sat down with him, her heart full as he handed her the gift. "I know it's not much," Tyler said, his voice shy, "but I wanted you to have this, for everything you've done for me." Gloria opened the box slowly, finding a small framed photo of the two of them, one from when Tyler was a child, smiling widely with her arm around him. She had always cherished that moment. It reminded her of a time when things were simpler, when she felt truly needed, truly seen. "It's perfect, Tyler," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't need expensive gifts or grand gestures. This was enough. This was everything she needed. Tyler looked at her, his eyes filled with remorse and hope. "I don't want to mess things up anymore, Mom. I just want to make it right. I know I can't change the past, but I'm going to do better for you, for me." Gloria's heart softened. She had always believed in him, even when it was hard to. And now she saw the man he was becoming, a man who could stand on his own and take responsibility for his actions. "You're already making it right," she replied, her voice steady. "Just keep doing what you're doing, keep showing up." "That's all I ever wanted." Tyler smiled, the weight of the past slowly lifting from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was real. And in that moment, Gloria knew that healing was possible, not just for her son, but for herself too. As the weeks went by, Gloria felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just the change in Tyler, though that certainly made her heart lighter. It was the change within herself. For the first time in years, she had learned to live for herself, not just for the people around her. She had spent so much of her life holding up the weight of others, thinking that if she didn't, everything would fall apart. But now, she was discovering the strength of standing on her own. One afternoon, as Gloria sat in her living room, sipping tea and flipping through an old photo album, she found herself reflecting on the years gone by. She looked at pictures of her younger self when she was full of life and ambition, long before she had become the caretaker, the silent giver, the invisible woman. Those days felt so far away, but as she gazed at the images, she realized something important. She wasn't that woman anymore, and that wasn't a bad thing. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a number she didn't recognize, but she picked it up anyway. "Hello? Hi, is this Gloria Williams?" The voice on the other end was warm and friendly, yet unfamiliar. "Yes, it is. Who's this?" "This is Lisa from the community center. I'm calling because we're putting together a new program for women in our neighborhood who have been through similar struggles, women who have been caregivers, who have given so much of themselves but haven't had the chance to focus on their own needs. We're looking for someone to help lead the program. We'd love for you to be a part of it." Gloria felt a twinge of surprise. "Me, lead a program?" she asked, unsure of what to think. It had been years since anyone had asked her to take the lead on anything. She had always been in the background, helping others but never standing out herself. "Yes, you," Lisa replied. "You're exactly the kind of woman we need. You've been through so much, and your story is one we think others could really relate to. We want you to help guide these women to rediscover their worth, their strength, and to show them that they don't have to keep giving without receiving. We believe you can be an inspiration." For a moment, Gloria was speechless. It felt surreal to hear someone speak about her in such a way, like she had something valuable to offer. She had spent so much of her life feeling like she had nothing left to give, but now here was an opportunity to help others. The thought of it excited her but also terrified her. Could she really do it? Could she truly lead others when she had spent so many years just trying to survive? "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," Gloria said, hesitating. "I'm not sure if I have what it takes to lead a program. I've never done anything like that before." Lisa's voice was calm and encouraging. "Gloria, you've done more than most. You've raised a son, you've supported your family, and now you're taking steps to take care of yourself. You've already led by example. You just need to share your story, your journey. That's all we need from you." There was a long pause as Gloria processed Lisa's words. It was as if everything that had been weighing on her heart, the doubt, the uncertainty, the fear of never being enough, began to fade away. Maybe this was her chance to finally give something back to herself, to help other women who had been in her shoes, who had given too much and lost themselves in the process. Maybe it was time to start living again, not just for her son or anyone else, but for herself. Okay, Gloria said, her voice stronger than it had been in a long time. I'll do it. I'll help lead the program. She hung up the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. A mixture of excitement and nervousness flooded through her. This was big, this was something she had never imagined for herself. But for the first time in years, she felt like she was taking control, like she was becoming the woman she was always meant to be. The next few days were filled with meetings, planning, and getting to know the other women involved. Gloria was surprised at how quickly she bonded with them. They were just like her, strong, capable women who had given everything for others and now found themselves unsure of where to start rebuilding their own lives. Gloria shared her story with them, how she had spent years sacrificing for her son and family, only to realize that she had neglected herself in the process. Her honesty and vulnerability made the women open up in return. They shared their own struggles, their own feelings of being invisible, of giving and giving without ever feeling seen. It was a revelation to Gloria that so many women felt the same way she did. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. As she helped guide the group through discussions and exercises, Gloria began to see the change in them. They were starting to believe in themselves again, starting to understand that they didn't have to give everything away to feel valued. It was a slow process, but Gloria could see the spark in their eyes, the same spark she had seen in herself when she decided to stop living for others and start living for herself. By the end of the first session, one of the women came up to her, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Gloria, you've made me realize that I don't have to be anyone's doormat anymore. I can stand up for myself too." Gloria smiled, her heart swelling with pride. This was what it was all about. Helping others find their strength just like she was finding hers. She wasn't just giving anymore. She was teaching, guiding, and empowering. And for the first time in a long time, Gloria felt like she was finally living the life she was meant to live. Gloria's newfound sense of purpose wasn't just a fleeting feeling. It was real. She felt more alive, more engaged in her own life than she had in years. Her time spent leading the program at the community center gave her something she had been missing, an outlet for her own strength, her own voice. The women she worked with were beginning to change, and as she guided them, she realized that she, too, was still evolving. But as with all things, there was still the tension that needed to be addressed. Tyler's calls had slowed down in the past week. Gloria could sense that he was retreating into himself again. Though he had promised to take responsibility and start standing on his own, there were moments when his words felt more like an obligation than a genuine commitment to change. She knew it wasn't easy for him. He had spent so much of his life relying on her, but now she wasn't sure if he was ready to take the full step. One afternoon, as Gloria was preparing dinner, the phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her heart skipped a beat. It was Tyler. She wiped her hands on the dish towel and picked up the phone, her voice steady. "Hey, Tyler, what's going on?" "Mom, I need to talk," Tyler said, his voice distant, almost like he was holding something back. Gloria felt her stomach tighten. "Sure, what's up?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Tyler spoke again, his words slower than usual. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I think I've made a huge mistake. I don't know how to fix it." Gloria's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, a mistake?" I've been doing what I said I wouldn't," Tyler admitted, his voice small, almost like a confession. "I've been asking you for more. I've been using you again, even though I promised I wouldn't. I just don't know how to stop." Gloria's chest tightened. She wasn't angry, not really, but the disappointment cut deeper than she wanted to admit. She had hoped that Tyler's change was permanent, that his promise to take responsibility wasn't just words. But here he was again, falling back into old patterns. "Tyler, I can't keep doing this for you," Gloria said, her voice calm but firm. "I've been there for you every time, but now you have to take full responsibility for your life. You have to stop relying on me to fix things." "I know, Mom, I do, it's harder than I thought. I don't know how to do it all on my own," he replied, his voice cracking slightly. Gloria sat down on the couch, her heart heavy. She had wanted to believe in him, to trust that he was ready to stand on his own. But this was a setback, and though it pained her, she knew what she had to do. "You're going to figure it out, Tyler, you have to, but I can't keep being the one to fix everything for you. You've got to start walking that path yourself, no matter how hard it is. And I'll be here to support you, but only if you're doing the work too. I can't do it for you." The silence between them felt like miles. Tyler didn't respond right away, and Gloria waited, giving him the space he needed to process her words. But inside, she could feel the shift. The line she had drawn was clear, and she wasn't going to cross it again. Finally, Tyler's voice broke the silence. "I get it, I really do, and I'm sorry, Mom, I've been leaning on you for too long. I'll do better, I'll start doing the work." Gloria's heart swelled with a mix of relief and sadness. She had always believed in him, but now she was realizing that belief couldn't be enough. He had to believe in himself. "I know you will, Tyler, but remember, it's not going to be easy. You've got to make the hard choices. And I'll be here to support you, but I won't do it for you." "Thanks, Mom," he said softly, the gratitude in his voice unmistakable. "I know I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm going to do it, I swear." The call ended with a quiet click, and Gloria sat there, her phone still pressed against her ear. She felt a sense of closure, but also a new kind of sadness. It wasn't that she didn't want to help him, she did. But now she knew that helping him meant giving him the space to grow on his own. And that, more than anything, was the hardest thing of all. The weeks that followed were a quiet mix of progress and setbacks. Tyler's attempts to stand on his own weren't always successful, but Gloria couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride every time he made a step forward. His calls, though less frequent, were more meaningful now. They were no longer filled with demands or expectations, but with real conversations about his struggles and his efforts to turn things around. For the first time in a long time, Gloria felt like she was hearing the truth from her son, not just the version he thought she wanted to hear. But with every victory, there came another moment of doubt, another struggle that reminded her of how far they still had to go. Tyler was trying, but it was clear he wasn't quite ready to face everything all at once. And as much as Gloria wanted to help him, she knew she had to resist the urge to swoop in and fix things. She had given him the tools. Now it was up to him to use them. One evening, after a long day of work and program meetings, Gloria sat on her porch, sipping a glass of iced tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The neighborhood was quiet, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to simply relax. Her mind wandered to her own life, how far she had come, how different everything felt now. She had finally started living for herself, carving out the time and space she needed to heal. But even in her moments of peace, the shadow of Tyler's struggles lingered. She couldn't escape the worry that still tugged at her heart every time her phone rang, every time she saw his name on the screen. She knew he was trying, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he still wasn't fully ready to let go of the safety net she had been for so many years. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. It was Tyler. "Mom, I need to talk. Can you meet me?" Her stomach clenched, but she didn't hesitate. "Of course, I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to his apartment felt longer than it actually was. Gloria's hands gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing through all the possible scenarios. She knew this was coming. She had been expecting it, that one moment where everything would come crashing down again. Tyler's journey wasn't going to be a smooth one, it was never going to be perfect. But the doubt, the fear, it was a hard weight to carry. When she arrived, Tyler was standing outside, his back to her, his hands shoved in his pockets. As soon as he heard her car pull up, he turned around, his face etched with a deep frustration she hadn't seen in a while. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. Gloria stepped out of the car and walked toward him, her heart heavy with the tension in the air. "What's going on, Tyler?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking down at the ground before meeting her gaze. "I messed up, I really messed up." Gloria's heart sank. She could see the defeat in his eyes, the shame that he was trying to hide. She wasn't angry, not this time, but there was something else inside her, something she couldn't ignore, something that made her realize that Tyler wasn't ready to face the full consequences of his actions. "Tell me what happened," she said softly. Tyler took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. I borrowed money from some people I shouldn't have. I thought I could pay them back, but now I can't. I don't know what to do, Mom. I've dug myself into a hole and I don't know how to get out of it." Gloria closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words settle in her mind. This was the point she had been dreading. The moment where the past would catch up to him, where all the things he had been avoiding, his debts, his mistakes, would force him to confront the reality of his life. "Tyler," Gloria said, her voice steady but firm, "you've been doing so well. But this is exactly what I was afraid of. You keep turning to others to solve your problems and you're not learning to fix them yourself." "I know, Mom, I know. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was doing better, but I couldn't keep up," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I really am." Gloria stood there for a moment, her hands folded in front of her. She wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay, but she knew that wouldn't help him. "It never had before. You're going to have to fix this on your own, Tyler," she said quietly, the weight of her words sinking in. "I can't keep carrying this for you. I've given you all the tools you need, and I'm not going to be your crutch anymore. You've got to face this and you've got to own it. No more running." Tyler's face twisted with a mix of fear and frustration. "But Mom, I can't do it alone. I need help." Gloria shook her head. "I can't help you this time, Tyler. Not like this. You have to make the choice to do better, to stand up and face your mistakes. If you don't do that, nothing will ever change." For a long time, Tyler didn't say anything. The silence between them was thick with tension, the weight of the moment hanging in the air like a storm about to break. And then, finally, Tyler nodded. "I get it, I really do. I've been running away from everything and I can't keep doing that. I have to make it right, for myself." Gloria's heart tightened, but she knew this was what he needed to hear. He had to be the one to choose to change, to choose to stand on his own, and maybe, just maybe, he would. Gloria walked toward him and placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support. "I'm always here, Tyler. But you've got to do this, you've got to take control." As she walked back to her car, Gloria's mind raced. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but Tyler had finally acknowledged the truth. He was facing his mistakes, and for the first time she believed he might actually change. It wasn't going to be easy, it wasn't going to be quick. But it was a start. The next few days passed with a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. Gloria could feel a shift in the air every time Tyler reached out, each conversation lighter than the last, each word more filled with hope. It was as if he was slowly coming to terms with the responsibility he had been avoiding for so long, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Yet she couldn't shake the unease that lingered in the pit of her stomach. There was still so much to face, so much to heal. Tyler had started looking for work again, something he hadn't done in months. He was attending meetings, working on a plan to pay off his debts, and for the first time, Gloria could see the weight of his actions really hitting him. The man he had been, the man who avoided responsibility, was beginning to fade, replaced by someone who was willing to change. Still, each time the phone rang, Gloria found herself holding her breath. She had lived so many years on edge, waiting for things to fall apart, that it was hard to let go of the old patterns of fear. Every time Tyler called now, there was a mix of hope and hesitation in her heart. On a Thursday afternoon, as Gloria sat on her porch enjoying the warmth of the sun, her phone buzzed. She didn't even have to check the screen. She knew it was Tyler. She picked it up, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "Mom," Tyler said, his voice a little more confident than it had been before, "I got a job." Gloria's heart skipped a beat. "You did?" she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "That's great, Tyler. I'm so proud of you." "Yeah," Tyler replied, his voice growing quieter. "I just got off the phone with a company I applied to a couple of weeks ago. They offered me a position. It's not much, but it's a start. And it's something I can do on my own." Gloria's smile widened. This was the moment she had been waiting for. It wasn't just the job that mattered. It was the realization that he was finally standing on his own, that he was finally taking responsibility for his future. "That's the first step," Gloria said softly, her voice filled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Tyler. You're doing it." Tyler was silent for a moment before he spoke again. "I don't want you to think I'm fixed yet, Mom. I know I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm really trying, and I wanted you to know that I'm not taking this for granted." "I never thought you would," she said, her voice steady but with a hint of emotion. "I've always believed in you, Tyler, but you have to believe in yourself too. This is your journey and you're on the right path." For a moment, the weight of everything that had happened seemed to lift. Tyler had made a real choice. He had chosen to stop running, to stop relying on others to fix his problems. And Gloria knew this was a turning point. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about it. As she hung up the phone, she sat back in her chair, letting the warmth of the sun wash over her. She thought about how far she had come, how far Tyler had come. The journey hadn't been easy and there were still bumps along the road, but it was a start. And that, she realized, was all they could really ask for. Though the relief of Tyler's progress settled over Gloria like a soft blanket, she knew that healing would take time. She couldn't undo the years of sacrifice, of carrying the weight of her family's burdens, but she could move forward. She could take the lessons learned and apply them to her own life. No longer would she allow herself to fade into the background. No longer would she be the silent giver, losing pieces of herself along the way. In the months that followed, Tyler continued to work hard at his new job. He stayed true to his word, making payments on his debts and taking responsibility for his actions. Gloria didn't have to worry about him as much anymore, though there were still moments when she found herself holding her breath, waiting for him to slip. But she had learned something important through it all. She couldn't control his journey. She could only control her own. She kept leading the program at the community center, finding new ways to help the women there rediscover their strength. Her own healing continued, too. She started traveling again, something she hadn't done in years. She took weekend trips to nearby towns, stayed in quaint bed and breakfasts, and spent time soaking in new experiences. It was liberating knowing that she could do these things for herself. There were still tough days. Days when the old worries crept in, when Tyler's struggles seemed to weigh her down again. But she learned to recognize those moments and let them pass. She had a life to live now, one she was building for herself, not just for others. One evening, Tyler called her to share some good news. "Mom, I'm getting a promotion. They said I've been doing a great job and they want to move me up." Gloria's heart swelled with pride. "That's incredible, Tyler. I knew you could do it." "I'm just doing the work, Mom, but I wouldn't have gotten here without you. You showed me how to stand on my own. You showed me what real strength looks like." Gloria smiled, the satisfaction of seeing her son find his footing finally settling in. It wasn't just about the job, it wasn't just about him making progress. It was about the shift she had seen in him, the growth, the responsibility. It was about him becoming the man she knew he could be. "I'm proud of you, Tyler." "I really am," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As she hung up the phone, Gloria sat back and reflected on everything. It hadn't been easy and it hadn't been quick, but the journey had been worth it. She had stood by Tyler, watched him grow, and in doing so, she had grown too. She had learned to let go, to take control of her own life, and to walk forward into a future where she was finally seen for who she was and for what she had always been capable of. The next few months were filled with the steady rhythm of daily life, but everything felt different. Tyler continued his journey of self-reliance and Gloria continued hers. Their relationship had shifted, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, Gloria felt a quiet peace within herself. She kept up with the program at the community center, guiding the women there as they found their own strength. She spoke to them not just from a place of authority, but from a place of experience. She knew what it was like to lose yourself in giving to others, but she also knew what it was like to reclaim your life, to find your voice again. And slowly, day by day, she found herself living for the first time in a long time. She wasn't just a mother, she wasn't just a caregiver. She was Gloria Williams, a woman who had faced the hardest battles and come out stronger on the other side. As she stood in front of the mirror one morning, brushing her hair and looking at the reflection of the woman staring back at her, Gloria realized something important. The woman she saw wasn't just a mother. She wasn't just the one who had been there for everyone else. She was the woman who had learned to stand tall, to live her own life, and to embrace the strength that had always been inside her. For the first time in years, she smiled at her reflection. And in that moment, she knew she was finally free. If you enjoyed this journey of growth, self-discovery, and healing, don't forget to share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Life is full of challenges, but every step toward reclaiming our own strength is worth it. Stay inspired, keep moving forward, and remember that the power to change your life is always within reach. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Keep growing, keep thriving, and always stand tall. Thank you for listening.